welcome to another edition of Money Matters on TV360 Nigeria. I am Adeshewa Odushoga. This week we'll be examining the implications of the federal government's plan to borrow the nation's pension fund to boost infrastructural development. Now, the federal government in January concluded plans to borrow 2 trillion naira from the current 10 trillion naira pension fund to finance the development of infrastructure. The disclosure was made at the National Economic Council meeting, presided over by the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. Recall that at the end of the NECA meeting in Abuja, Kaduna State Governor Malam Nasir El-Rufai stated that the decision of the federal government to pull 2 trillion naira out of the pension funds was reached by a NECA subcommittee. El-Rufai says the country will never be able to address its road infrastructure deficit with the current budgetary allocation for road construction and maintenance. He explained that the 200 billion naira in the 2019 budget and the 169 billion in 2020 budget roads cannot be properly fixed. In 2019, 200 billion naira was budgeted for construction and maintenance of federal highways. In 2020, the budget is 169 billion naira. Now, he said if they continue this way, the federal government will not be able to fund highway infrastructure, and there is a need to unlock funds to construct and maintain highways. Speaking on the rationale to borrow from 10 trillion naira pension fund, El-Rufai stated that the decision followed an interim report earlier presented to the council, and the decision to borrow 2 trillion naira from the pension fund was in compliance with the Pension Reform Act 2004, which empowers the government to borrow 20% of the fund to address national issues. According to him, various countries of the world, such as Chile and South Africa, funded their infrastructure growth by borrowing money from workers' pension funds. El-Rufai also stated that with Nigeria's pension funds largely dominated by youth in their 30s, who still have several years ahead of retirement, utilizing the funds for infrastructure would not generate any problem. According to him, other infrastructures mentioned are rail and power projects, which is said the committee had identified in 3 areas where the pension funds will be invested. He added that the borrowing would be done through bonds with private companies invested in road and rail infrastructure and paying within a period of 20 years.
Corruption not in my country.
Madam, madam, welcome. Okay, madam, no worry. When you deliver the balance, we'll give you the goods.
No problem, no problem. All right, so now well done.
Thank you. Hey, Oga, I still say she don't bring money. Maybe we use this one for him now.
She wants mahogany, not white wood.
Oga, our work now to join wood together, deliver whatever to customer. Put the remaining profit for pocket.
This is corruption, not in my country. Corruption not in my country.
Stop corruption now.
Other countries have been using the same mechanism. South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and other countries have been using their pension fund and the sovereign wealth authorities' investment process to create a platform for SIP. So the committee reported and have begun to identify potential road projects and road infrastructure, and also other infrastructure in the power sector, in the rail sector, that can be used for can be funded through this mechanism.
Corruption not in my country.
Now, yeah.
Yes, Oga.
Okay.
Where I go come find 300 naira change?
I better try look for change now. When they do business. Hey, Timmy. I did, bro. I be. I beg, give me 200 naira. Make I take sort out this guy. If let's no get change.
Take it, give him.
I said 200.
Give him 100 naira.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree to pay 200.
How much you think they carry people from that place we carry on the chair?
Okay.
Not they touch me.
Now 100 naira. He agreed to pay.
Because that was what you said was the fair.
Why you not go pay you? Why you they extort your customer? You see this corruption, what would they hear for news? They see for people everywhere. Now be this. This is corruption.
Not in our country.
Corruption not in my country.
Stop corruption now.
Now, joining me to discuss this is the Director General of the Nigeria's Employment Consultative Association, NECA, Mr. Timothy Olawale. Thank you for joining us on the program.
You're welcome.
Now, Director, let me ask, the federal government has announced plans to borrow 2 trillion naira from the pension fund. Now, in your own opinion, how would you react to this?
Well, the position of employers of labor is very, very simple with regards to the planned borrowing by the presidency or by government, federal government of Nigeria, from the savings of both workers and employers on behalf of workers in the pension fund. The money ab initio or primarily was saved to ensure a comfortable life for workers after retirement. In other words, even if there will be difference in their lifestyle or quality of life, it should not be dramatically different from what they used to live. And that also underscores the importance of safety of the funds. We have a nasty experience with regards to pension fund as managed in time past in the public sector. And retirees are yet to recover from all those past experiences of woes. And that was why we all were celebrating the advent of the Pension Reform Act in 2004 and as reviewed in 2014. Now, there are financial regulations and regulations rolled out by PENCOM on how this money can be invested. And to the best of our knowledge as well, federal government is also a beneficiary of those investments because a chunk of the money in time past have been invested in government bonds and other instruments. And the revenues that accrue from that are being used also by government for whatever purpose, developmental purposes, infrastructural purposes. But that was done within the scope of the provisions of the law. But what government now wants to do, the borrowing of 2 trillion, is outside the scopes of the provisions of the law as well as the regulation that guides such investment. And we feel it's a dangerous trend because it has the capacity of eroding the trust that both workers and employers have in the pensions reform scheme. It also has the capacity to also create panic in the system because employers and their workers, especially those that are retired, will be concerned about the safety and sustainability of their pension fund. So that's why we are saying that government should not go along this line. And one fundamental thing is that, like that Yoruba proverb says, you cannot shave someone's head behind his back. The owners of this fund, the workers and employers alike who are contributing to it, were never consulted, were never carried along, were not informed about the plan. We all just read it on the pages of newspaper and heard it in the media. And this is our commonwealth. Our future depends on this. And we dare say that government should put a halt to such plan of borrowing 2 trillion naira from the fund, or even borrowing any amount whatsoever outside the provisions of the law and outside the provisions of the guidelines for investment that has been agreed upon not only by PENCOM but in consultation with stakeholders. And having put a halt to it, we also want government to consult widely with both employers of labor as well as workers' representatives so that we understand what they are trying to do, as well as also lend our voice to the interest of our constituency.
We understand that according to the Contributory
Yes.
Pension Scheme 2004,
Yes.
the pension fund is dominated by funds from workers and employers
true.
over the years. Now, there is nothing
No.
from the government. Now, do you think this gives government access to borrow from these funds?
Well, government is not supposed to have access to it. As a matter of fact, it's an independent fund that's regulated by the Pension Reform Act. It is contributed by workers who contribute a percentage. It used to be 7.5 apiece by employers who contribute on behalf of the workers and workers ourselves. But now it has been increased. Employers contribute a larger chunk as against what the workers contribute. So it's not just the the workers' contribution. Employers also contribute in support of the future of their workers. And it is so regulated in such a way that even the pension fund administrators, the PFA, that opens RSA accounts for the employees, do not have access to the fund. The fund is domiciled with the pension fund custodians. And these are banks that you cannot just walk up to them and tamper with the money. So ordinarily, government is not also supposed to have access to it. I know government is also migrating from the public pension scheme to this private contributory pension scheme. And that's why they have the Pension Transition Arrangement Department, PTAD, who is midwifing this. But even if they are contributing on behalf of their workers, it is no justification why they should also access the fund. Because the spirit of it is to safeguard the fund and to ensure that such funds are secured and invested in a wise way, that it will not be tampered with, and the future of the pensioners will not be endangered. Having said that, I also know most of the state governments that wants to key into the pension fund borrowing are not even contributing to it on behalf of their workers. And this is even immoral. So, we also know that we have been shouting and crying foul with regards to our concern concerning the borrowing trend of government. That look, payments of the huge liability of debts, especially held by government, is not sustainable. And we have concern about the ability of government at the long run to continue to pay. As it is now, it is actually touching on the welfare of Nigerians through the huge amount of money, over 30% of our budget that's being used to service the debts. Now you want to add the sweat of Nigerian workers and employers to that liability. That would be most unfair.
Now, if eventually this plan to borrow 2 trillion naira come into place, how would you think this would affect the remittances of workers into the pension fund?
Well, it's the law that we must contribute. We, as responsible corporate citizens, employers will still continue to contribute, and will continue to ensure that their workers' contributions are remitted. However, you will be making deductions from workers' salaries under protest, because already even the news alone, not even the action, has sent panic waves through the rank and file of workers. They are losing trust already and losing confidence already in the scheme. So it will be like forcing them to continue to comply. And we hope it will not get to a situation where there will be rebellion. And of course, we know once this type of signals are happening in the world of work, it's also a recipe for non-productivity, because they'll be demoralized and productivity will suffer. And of course, we know it also has impact on the competitiveness and sustainability of business at the long run.
The federal government's borrowing trend has been worrisome over the years. Recently, we just sought out for a loan from China.
Yes.
Now, don't you think that Nigeria may run into debt crisis if care is not
We
taken?
have said repeatedly that, look, government should think out of the box and find other means of funding its budget. Borrowing is good when it is sustainable, when it comes to repayment. Borrowing is good when it is channeled to productive ventures or expenses. And the concern of Nigerians is that there is no correlation between the huge amount of debt that Nigeria has incurred and infrastructural developments, because there are lots of deficits infrastructurally. We know the story with our power. The more we spend, the less the sector is developed. We know the story with our road network. Yes, there is improvement and massive construction, but how sustainable is it? The railway system that has been reactivated. There must be justifiable expenses that will at least show that X amount that is spent on this infrastructural development is actually the quantum that's supposed to be spent on it. Not that we should see the output of X minus 2, whereas X has been spent.
Okay, Director, recently the federal government just retrieved sum of $321 billion from the United States government, being part of the stolen loans by Abacha. Now, in my own opinion, I think we have enough money on ground to handle the infrastructure now. Why do you think there's a need for the federal government to go further in borrowing from the pension
The
fund?
infrastructural deficit in our system is huge. And what they are diverting to it is just a drop in the ocean. It's even not sufficient. But our position is that whatever you want to devote for infrastructural development, everything, we should ensure that everything goes into that infrastructural development. It should not be used as a conduit pipe to siphon public funds. Secondly, when you say you are developing infrastructure at the expense of future generation, I think government should explore the public-private partnership more rather than borrowing and borrowing. Government should access private capital and concession most of this infrastructure to private enterprise that will be interested in partnering with government and recoup their funds over the years. I think that's the way to go rather than borrowing, because the extent of our borrowing is synonymous with mortgaging the future of our future generation, born children. And it's also not fair on them, it's not fair on the nation. And what legacy are we leaving? Are we leaving the legacy of a profligate parents or generation?
Well, Director, I must thank you very much
pleasure.
for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Corruption not in my country.
How work?
Correct, Oga.
What is it that you are doing?
Oga, they come out the part now. Make we go sell for.
Oga, na correct kuza be this o. Oga Titus and him boys them. They do am. They will come out the original parts, sell them, make plenty kuza.
No wonder our customers bring the generator back to our workshop because they bad. And not because of stuff.
Now because they overuse the generator. Plus say NEPA no they give them electricity.
Before I open my eye, Makachuku, look at my talk in the heaven. Replace this original generator parts back inside this generator of my customer. In short, before una do am, front jump. One, front jump. 1, 2, 1. Stealing of generator parts or changing of original parts to a fake one. That is the corruption. Not in my country.
Corruption not in my country.
Stop corruption now.
Well, that's it on the program. Many thanks for watching. I am Adeshewa Odushoga. Bye for now.